At just 21 years old, Autumn Shanks had her whole life ahead of her, until one night, it was abruptly taken away. Shot dead in the quiet of her apartment, her future was stolen in an instant, leaving a family shattered and a community in disbelief. When police arrived at the scene, the silence spoke volumes. Autumn's lifeless body lay untouched, no signs of a struggle, no indication of the horror that had unfolded just moments before. But standing nearby, watching it all unfold, was 23-year-old Denarius Duabius, the man who once claimed to love her, eerily calm, showing no signs of remorse. Was this the tragic end of a dangerous relationship that everyone feared, or was something more sinister at play? Stay with us as we unravel the chilling truth behind Autumn Shanks' murder. Before we dive into the story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on the cases that matter most. Let's get started. Autumn Shanks was a young woman full of promise. She had a zest for life that was impossible to ignore. Always the one to lead the charge in any adventure, Autumn's energy seemed to light up any room she entered. Whether it was racing bikes down the street, climbing trees, or pushing herself to try things others wouldn't dare, she was fearless. This was the girl who believed the world was full of opportunity, a belief that drove her toward her dreams. She was driven, passionate, and full of potential, determined to create a future that matched her vibrant spirit. To those who knew her, Autumn wasn't just a daughter, sister, or friend, she was a force. A ball of energy who could fill any space with her laughter, warmth, and kindness. She had a way of making everyone feel special, leaving an impact on every person she met. Her father, Orlando Shanks, remembers her as someone impossible to forget, with a contagious smile and a heart full of generosity. Autumn had many interests, but fashion and beauty were close to her heart. She loved experimenting with makeup, dressing with style, and finding new ways to express herself through her appearance. At the same time, she was no stranger to the thrill of adventure. Whether it was behind the wheel of her Audi or cruising through town on her motorcycle, Autumn managed to balance elegance with an untamed confidence that made her truly unique. She was a young woman full of life, and everyone who knew her saw her for the bright, ambitious soul she was. Autumn met Denarius Duabius in high school, and to the outside world he seemed like the perfect match. He was charming, athletic, and the son of a well-known preacher. He carried himself with confidence, always the center of attention, and many people admired him. To Autumn, Denarius seemed like the kind of person who could offer her the stability she longed for. He was everything she thought she wanted in a partner, a good-looking, confident guy who came from a respected family. But there was another side to Denarius, one that only surfaced once the relationship began to deepen. Beneath the surface of the charming athlete and preacher's son was a man who struggled with anger and control. His temper flared in moments of frustration, and those closest to Autumn started to notice the shift. What began as occasional disagreements soon escalated into emotional manipulation. Denarius began to isolate Autumn from her friends and family, making her feel dependent on him. The love she thought she had for him turned into something much darker, as she found herself trapped in a cycle she couldn't escape. Her friends and family could see the changes in her. The free-spirited, confident young woman they knew began to withdraw, becoming quieter and more reserved. The person who once lit up every room now walked through life with her head down, as if carrying the weight of an invisible burden. They saw the manipulation and control, but Autumn felt helpless, unable to break free from the grip of the man she thought she loved. That as time passed, the changes in Autumn became undeniable. Her once vibrant and adventurous spirit was slowly fading. She became more reserved, quieter, and her friends noticed she was no longer the carefree young woman they had known. There was a new fear in her eyes, a hesitation that hadn't been there before. Her laughter was less frequent, her smile forced, and it was clear to those around her that something was wrong. But Autumn tried to hide it, perhaps out of fear or a belief that things would improve. Her father, Orlando Shanks, saw it first. He knew his daughter better than anyone, and he could feel the weight of something dark pressing down on her. Orlando had tried to warn her about Denarius time and time again. He saw the red flags, the controlling nature, and the subtle manipulation that was creeping into their relationship. He spoke to Autumn, pleaded with her, and even confronted Denarius directly, trying to make it clear that this was not a healthy relationship. But Autumn, caught in the grip of fear and love, didn't listen. The more Orlando pushed, the more Autumn withdrew. She became increasingly isolated from her family, retreating into herself as Daenerys continued to tighten his control. Every attempt to intervene seemed to make things worse. Autumn would pull away, her once strong relationship with her family fraying at the edges. Her father's warnings were ignored, and as the days passed, his concern for her safety grew. He saw the signs, but the system around them failed to protect her, and the situation grew more dangerous with every passing day. The shift in their relationship came slowly at first. Small arguments that seemed insignificant, a few disagreements here and there. But over time those moments began to build. What started as occasional tension turned into something far more controlling. Daenerys started to isolate Autumn from her friends and family, slowly cutting off her support system. He controlled where she went, who she saw, and what she did, making her feel like she couldn't make a move without his approval. The emotional manipulation became even more apparent. Daenerys would apologize, promising change, only to fall back into the same patterns, leaving Autumn trapped in a cycle of hope and despair. Autumn tried to break free. She yearned for the independence and freedom she once had. She wanted to regain control of her life, to live without fear. Her family saw glimpses of this desire for change in the moments when she reached out to them, opening up a little more, trying to find her way out. But every time she attempted to break away, Daenerys would pull her back in. He would use words, promises of change, and empty apologies to manipulate her emotions and keep her close. And the more she tried to regain her independence, the tighter his grip became. The fear was suffocating. For Autumn, leaving was never simple, it was terrifying. She feared what Daenerys would do if she truly tried to leave. She feared his anger, his threats, and the way he could make her feel guilty for wanting to escape. Leaving was not just about walking away from a relationship. It was about breaking free from someone who had made her believe that she needed him, that she couldn't survive without him. For Autumn, the fear of the unknown, the fear of what would happen if she left, kept her tethered to him. Despite everything she knew deep down about the danger she was in, Orlando Shanks had reached his breaking point. He had seen enough, watched his daughter slowly disappear under the weight of Daenerys's control and manipulation. Desperate to protect her, he took matters into his own hands and confronted Daenerys directly. It wasn't a loud, explosive confrontation. There were no raised voices or shouting matches. Orlando simply asked him to stay away from his daughter, urging him to stop the abuse. His plea came from a place of love and fear. He knew his daughter was in danger and he wasn't going to sit by any longer. But Daenerys didn't take kindly to being challenged. In an instant, the situation escalated violently. Without warning, he lashed out. The first punch hit Orlando hard, dropping him to the ground. The second punch left Orlando unconscious, his world spinning as he fought to stay awake. But what he saw when he regained consciousness was something no father should ever have to witness. Standing between him and Daenerys was Autumn, pleading with him to stop, begging for her father's safety. It was a devastating moment, a daughter defending the very man who had just been attacked by the man she thought she loved. Orlando could hardly believe what he was seeing. His heart broke as he realized the depth of the control Daenerys had over Autumn. The love he had fought for, the fatherly protection he had tried to offer, seemed to be slipping further and further away. The emotional toll on Orlando was immense. He had done everything he could, tried to warn his daughter, to save her, but it was like fighting an invisible force. Watching Autumn stand there, caught between the two men, was the most helpless he had ever felt. He knew deep down that things had gone too far, that this was no longer something they could fix. The fear, the regret, and the pain were overwhelming. He had tried to intervene, tried to protect her, but the control Daenerys had over her was too powerful. It was a moment that left Orlando forever changed, a father watching his daughter's future slip away, unable to stop it. In the months leading up to her death, there was a subtle shift in Autumn. For the first time in a long while, she began to reconnect with her father. Their conversations became more frequent, and Orlando started to see the familiar spark in his daughter that had been missing for so long. It was as if she was finally finding the strength to fight back, to reclaim the life that had been taken from her. Autumn was no longer the quiet, reserved woman she had been. She was opening up, sharing her fears, and for the first time in years she was talking about leaving Daenerys. She was planning a future without him. Autumn had begun making plans to walk away, to start fresh and free herself from the toxic relationship that had consumed her. She spoke about returning home more often, reconnecting with her old friends, and pursuing the dreams she had once put on hold. Orlando could feel the change. He could sense that his daughter was finally gaining the courage to break free. But for Autumn, the decision to leave was not without immense risk. She was no longer just a woman trying to escape an abusive relationship. She was a woman caught in the most dangerous time for any victim of abuse. The moment she decided to leave, the balance of power shifted. Denarius, realizing that he was losing control over her, would stop at nothing to tighten his grip. This is when abuse escalates the most, when the abuser feels threatened by the loss of control. The danger was real and it was looming. Autumn's desire for freedom was growing stronger, but so was the threat to her safety. Her decision to leave would not just change her life, it would cost her everything. On the night of February 7, 2025, Autumn's fate was sealed in a way that no one could have predicted. What should have been a night of quiet reflection, a time for the young woman to continue her plans for a brighter future, instead turned into a nightmare. At 1:53 a.m., the phone call that would change everything came through. A frantic voice on the other end of the line desperately cried out to the 911 dispatcher, "She's been shot, she's not moving, please hurry." The words were rushed, barely understandable, but the message was clear. Autumn Shanks was in grave danger and her life was slipping away. Within minutes, police arrived at the Pinebrook apartment complex. The streets were still and quiet, the early morning air thick with tension. As they entered the apartment, the scene before them was chaotic. Furniture knocked over, a lamp shattered on the floor, and a half-empty bottle of alcohol nearby. But it was the bedroom that held the truth. There, lying motionless on the bed, was Autumn. A single gunshot wound to the head. Her body was still and blood pooled beneath her, staining the sheets. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence of a fight, just a quiet, chilling finality that made it clear. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. The officers froze, taking in the horrifying scene. It was as though the apartment itself had absorbed the shock of what had happened. The details spoke volumes, no struggle, no fight for survival. Just a young woman who had been taken before her time, and the man who had once claimed to love her, still standing there, emotionless and silent, as if nothing had happened. The tragedy was now undeniable. When the officers arrived at the scene, one figure stood out, Denarius Duabius. He was there, just a few feet away from Autumn's lifeless body, his expression blank, his posture unmoved. He didn't rush to help, didn't show panic or remorse. In fact, there was nothing in his demeanor that reflected the gravity of what had just occurred. It was as though he didn't feel the weight of the tragedy at all. The lack of any struggle in the apartment, coupled with the position of Autumn's body, told a chilling story. She had been shot at close range, and the way her body lay suggested a cold, calculated act, an execution-style killing, not a moment of heated passion or a crime of impulse. Everything about the scene screamed that this was planned, deliberate, and carried out without hesitation. As the officers secured the scene and approached Denarius, his behavior remained unsettlingly calm. There was no resistance when he was arrested, no attempt to flee or fight back. He simply stood there, motionless, as if he already knew what was coming, as though he had accepted his fate. The complete absence of emotion, the lack of remorse or fear, left the officers in disbelief. It was as if he had already detached himself from the reality of what he had just done. As the investigation unfolded, the evidence against Denarius became undeniable. Police quickly discovered the weapon, a firearm, lying close by, still warm from the recent shooting. The gun was not just a piece of evidence, it was the key to proving what had happened in that apartment. Along with the gun, the lack of any signs of forced entry, the absence of struggle, and the way Autumn's body was positioned all pointed to a premeditated act. Denarius had left a clear trail of guilt, one that would be impossible to ignore. Denarius was arrested on the spot, without resistance. His calm demeanor as he was taken into custody did nothing to erase the mounting evidence against him. The details of the crime, coupled with his complete lack of remorse, confirmed what police had feared. This was not a crime of passion or a momentary lapse of judgment, but a carefully executed act of violence. With the evidence pointing squarely at him, Denarius faced serious charges. He was charged with first-degree murder, a crime that carries the weight of life in prison or even the death penalty. The charge was not just a reflection of his actions, but of the coldness with which he took Autumn's life. As the legal proceedings began, it became clear that this would not be a simple case to resolve. Denarius's fate was now in the hands of the justice system, but no legal outcome could ever bring Autumn back. The aftermath of Autumn's death left her father, Orlando Shanks, devastated. The weight of his heartbreak was unbearable, knowing that he had tried to protect his daughter, but it had been too late. He had warned her about Denarius, pleaded with her to leave, but those warnings were ignored, and now he was left with the painful reality that his daughter was gone. Orlando could never shake the feeling that if only he had done more, if only he had reached her sooner, things might have been different. His mind replayed the conversations, the moments when he tried to pull her away, and the pain of knowing that he had failed her when she needed him most. Orlando's last conversation with Autumn, just days before her death, was now etched in his memory forever. They had talked, but he never could have known how dire the situation really was. He had seen the changes in her, how withdrawn she had become, how fearful, but he couldn't have imagined how deeply she was trapped. The regret he felt for not knowing the full extent of what she was enduring weighed on him like a heavy, unrelenting burden. He had tried to warn her, to save her, but now, with Autumn gone, there was nothing left but the unbearable grief of a father who had lost his daughter in the most senseless and tragic way. The emotional toll on Orlando was immense. The loss of his daughter, the unanswered questions, and the overwhelming feelings of helplessness consumed him. No amount of guilt or remorse could bring her back. Every day he was forced to live with the knowledge that he couldn't save her, that his efforts were not enough. And that helplessness was something that Orlando could never escape. The painful reality that, despite all his love and warnings, he couldn't protect Autumn from the fate that befell her. Orlando Shanks's message to others is clear, born from the overwhelming pain of losing his daughter. Take action before things get out of hand. His advice comes from a place of love, a father's regret, and the painful realization that warning signs were there, but they were ignored. He urges everyone to be vigilant, to recognize the subtle and not so subtle signs of abuse in their loved ones before it's too late. Whether it's changes in behavior, withdrawing from family, or an unexplainable fear of someone they should trust, Orlando stresses the importance of acting on these signs. His plea is simple but urgent. If you notice something wrong, don't wait. Speak up, intervene, and don't allow someone to fall into the trap that Autumn did. Sometimes, a simple conversation, a caring word, or an offer of help can make all the difference. He wishes more had been done for Autumn before it was too late. Orlando's loss serves as a warning to others, urging them to step in before they find themselves asking themselves the same heartbreaking question. Could I have done more? His message is one of action, because when it comes to abuse, the most dangerous time is when the victim decides to leave. And in that moment, someone needs to be there to help. The tragic death of Autumn Shanks shines a harsh light on the systemic failures that allowed her to fall through the cracks despite multiple warnings and intervention attempts. For years, Autumn's family, especially her father, recognized the danger she was in. They saw the signs of emotional abuse, the controlling behavior, and the isolation she faced, but the systems that were supposed to protect her failed to act. Orlando Shanks fought tirelessly to intervene, confronting Daenerys directly and reaching out to law enforcement, yet nothing was done to stop the escalating violence. The justice system, which should have been the safeguard for victims like Autumn, failed to offer the protection she needed. Each time Orlando raised his concerns, each time he begged for help, the response was insufficient. There was no urgency, no intervention that could prevent the eventual tragedy. Even with clear signs of abuse, the legal system failed to act swiftly enough, and the support that should have been available to Autumn was either delayed or non-existent. Her voice, along with her father's, was ignored by the very systems meant to protect her. Societal structures also played a role in this failure. People often fail to recognize the full extent of abusive relationships, dismissing red flags or chalking them up to personal issues that can't be meddled in. Autumn's friends and family did their best to support her, but they were left to navigate a system that didn't adequately respond to their concerns. In the end, the lack of a coordinated and responsive system meant that Autumn never received the help she desperately needed. The tragic loss of a young woman with so much life ahead of her should serve as a stark reminder of how desperately these systems need to change, how more needs to be done to prevent abuse from escalating to the point of no return. Autumn Shanks was so much more than just another headline. She was a young woman full of potential, brimming with dreams and a passion for life. She had ambitions that stretched far beyond the walls of her small apartment. Plans to make a difference, to explore the world, and to live a life on her own terms. To her family and friends, she wasn't just a victim. She was a vibrant force, a sister, a daughter, and a friend whose laughter lit up every room. Autumn's life was just beginning, and yet it was cut short in the most senseless way. Her tragic end serves as a haunting reminder of the dangers that lurk within abusive relationships. What may have started as small warning signs eventually became a deadly cycle of control and manipulation. It is a stark reminder of how crucial early intervention can be, of how important it is to recognize the signs of abuse before it escalates. Autumn's story is a call to action, one that demands we pay attention to those around us, to listen when someone is in need, and to step in before it's too late. She had so much more to give, and the world was robbed of a bright, promising soul. The loss of Autumn is a tragedy, but it also underscores the need for all of us to be vigilant and proactive in preventing others from falling victim to the same fate. The story of Autumn Shanks is not just one of loss, it's a wake-up call. It's a reminder that abuse often starts with small, seemingly insignificant actions that, if ignored, can grow into something much darker. We must recognize the signs of abusive relationships early. Whether it's emotional manipulation, isolation, or fear, these are the red flags we cannot afford to overlook. It's crucial that we all take a stand, that we support victims of abuse, and that we act before it's too late. That if you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, don't wait for the situation to worsen. Help is available, and there are resources ready to support those in need. Domestic violence hotlines, crisis centers, and support groups are there to provide a lifeline. No one should have to face abuse alone, and we all have a role to play in helping victims break free from the cycle of violence. If you see the signs, speak up. If you hear the warnings, act. Every step we take could save a life. Let's work together to ensure that no one else has to endure what Autumn did. We owe it to her, and to everyone suffering in silence, to stand up and make a difference. As we reflect on the tragic case of Autumn Shanks, we're reminded of the critical importance of recognizing the signs of abuse and acting before it's too late. Her life, filled with so much promise, was cut short by a man who took everything from her. Was justice served in this case, or did the system fail her at every turn? What should happen to denarius do habeas for his actions? We want to hear your thoughts. Please share your opinions in the comments below. Remember, this isn't just a story, it's a call to action. If you found Autumn's story impactful, be sure to like, comment, and share it to spread awareness. The more we talk about these issues, the more we can protect those who are suffering in silence. Subscribe to stay updated on more true crime cases that demand to be heard. Thank you for watching, and please remember, you have the power to make a difference. Let's keep fighting for justice, one story at a time.